Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be Valentine's Day Desserts. I'm sharing with you 5 different desserts, and the first one I'm doing is going to be heart brownies. I'm just starting with a box of brownie mix. I'm just going to make it according to package directions. The only difference is I'm going to add a piece of parchment paper and spray that to the pan so the brownies come out easier in the end. And I'm doing this video in the order that I filmed everything. So if it looks a little weird as we go through the video, that is why. But honestly, this is how I cook. I like to get everything baked. Then I'll go through and do everything else. So I wanted to get started with just getting everything mixed up. And I wanted to start with the brownies. So that's what I'm doing here. The next thing I'm going to do is get started on red velvet cheesecake cupcakes. So you need a red velvet cake mix according to the package directions, a pack of cream cheese, an egg, vanilla, and some sugar. But I'm starting by preparing my red velvet cake mix according to the package directions. And you will see that I use coconut oil. And I ended up using coconut oil because I ended up running out of vegetable oil. But it worked out perfectly fine either way. after I got the cupcakes mixed together, I just added all of my cheesecake ingredients to my mixing bowl, and then I'll put that on my stand mixer. But I'm starting with the cream cheese, vanilla, egg, and granulated sugar, and I will include all the recipes down below in the description box. But you start by filling your cupcake papers about halfway through with your red velvet cake batter. So I did that, and then I added about a tablespoon or so of my cheesecake batter to the top of it, and I marbled it with a skewer before putting it in the oven. And for the leftover red velvet cake mix, I just put that in a pan and I baked that along with the rest of everything, and I'll use that later on for another recipe. But the next one is going to be no bake cookie dough hearts. So you will need granulated sugar, I should have taken the lid off of it. All-purpose flour, 2 sticks of butter, softened, vanilla, baking soda. I'm using mini chocolate chips, salt, and brown sugar. And you mix all of this up by hand, which may sound weird, but it worked out perfectly fine. After I got everything mixed together, I stirred in the chocolate chips and then I smoothed everything out on a parchment lined baking sheet so this could go in the refrigerator and chill. It set for 20 minutes and I ended up having to chill mine closer to an hour, so I was actually able to cut out hearts, but you'll see that later. Now I'm going to work on some Oreo bark. So you need Oreos, white chocolate chips, regular chocolate chips, and sprinkles of your choice. Of course, you can do you can do this with any color chocolate you want and any types of sprinkles you want. I'm just using Valentine's Day sprinkles because it's Valentine's Day. So I'm going to start with my white chocolate, and I'm just smoothing that out on some parchment paper. And then I'll add some Oreos, and then I ended up having to melt more white chocolate to go over the top of that. Then I melted some regular chocolate to kind of swirl over that, and I just decorated it with sprinkles, and then it went in the refrigerator to set up. Okay, so now at this point I'm taking a heart cookie cutter and I'm just going to cut out parts from this cookie dough that I made. And I ended up grabbing another piece of parchment paper with another baking sheet under it so I could put my hearts on that. But I was kind of running out of space at this point, as you could tell. end up having to put those chocolate chip cookie hearts back in the refrigerator to let them set up before I could dip them. So at this point, I am tearing up the red velvet cake mix that I baked to make red velvet truffles. This might be the easiest recipe in this video, simply because all it is red velvet cake and cream cheese. Okay, so at this point I'm rolling them into balls and then they will go back into the refrigerator. They will go into the refrigerator to set up a little bit before I dip them in white chocolate. Okay, so here this is. I'm breaking the cookie bark into pieces, and I ended up, after breaking one piece, just deciding, you know what, I'm not doing this by hand. I'm just going to go through and get a knife out and cut it up. Okay, so at this point, I am dipping the red velvet truffles. And as I dip those in white chocolate, I'll shake them off and then top them with sprinkles. Okay, so at this point, the brownies are done or cooled off enough for me to be able to cut those out. So I'm cutting out the heart shapes. And then once I get them cut out, I will go through and I will drizzle some white chocolate on them and decorate those with sprinkles. And that is really as easy as that. And I got 11 hearts out of this. If you want more than that, you'll need to use a smaller cookie cutter. Okay, so the last thing I'm doing is dipping the chocolate chip cookie dough hearts into some chocolate. And then I'm going to decorate those with some sprinkles as well. Of course, you can do this however you want. You can decorate however you want. You can use a different kind of chocolate. Whatever kind of makes you happy. And these are really good. And no, I didn't coat all of these. I just coated enough for this video and I froze the rest because this was really good cookie dough anyway, without it being dipped in chocolate. So that's what I did, and I didn't feel like melting more chocolate because I was gonna have to open a new bag. So yeah. Okay, but this is what all the desserts look like when they're done. I just kind of displayed them on this tray because I thought it was cute this way. And this would be really cute for Valentine's Day or like a Galentine's thing, but this is just for us.